to welcome all of our guests and just do a brief introduction. We have Melody Henderson. She's a managing counsel and consultant. Peter, he's IP counsel. Stacy Stewart, also IP counsel, and Sunil Gupta, assistant deputy general counsel. And I just want to say thank you to all of you for joining us today to really discuss these questions that we have lined out and address the impact of education on the legal industry. Just as a quick brief of what we'll be discussing, our first question today will be the key qualifications and characteristics of what makes a good attorney. So I'd like to go ahead and start off our discussion with Stacy. Will be taking the lead on this question.
Recording in progress.
So for the first question, Stacy, if you'd like to take the lead on that.
Yeah, would you tell the group that's listening the question that we have in front of us, so
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. So the first question that we'll be discussing today is, what key qualifications and characteristics make a good attorney?
When I think of key qualifications, I think first of the person, the whole person, and that's something that I'm very passionate about when we begin to think of what qualifications would make a good attorney. A good attorney is inherently the individual, the entire individual, and not just a measure of the educational pursuits or successes, etc., that they may have had leading up to getting into the legal profession. So for me, I believe that the key qualifications would be someone who has a measure of, a strong ethical underpinning, the ability to truly understand, their role in the legal space and in the legal fraternity. Someone who is extremely passionate in everything that they do, apply themselves well, all of these things that would make up the entire person. And oftentimes we find ourselves completely bogged down by, some of the things like, what school did you go to, how high was your SAT or your LSAT scores, and these different things, which I believe in part does assist in understanding the whole person, but it really doesn't speak to what qualifications would make up a good attorney. So in my experience, I've seen attorneys who may not have gone to top institutions or who may not have succeed necessarily, on a testing level. And I don't think those things are necessarily key components into what the qualifications of an attorney would be. So in my view, I look to the person themselves. Who are they? What's their backstory? What's their cultural underpinning? What are their drivers day to day? And I think that those things play a greater part in developing the team and developing the attorney and in developing the practice of law.
Would any of the panelists like to add to that?
Sure. I'll chime in. Kind of building off what Stacy said, it also depends on what the attorney is asked to do. So, one of the guys that I went to law school with at the University of Arkansas, he is a trial lawyer and he represents plaintiffs, and he has an amazing gift to connect with people, and in his case, juries. That's not really something you can measure on an LSAT. It's not reflected in a GPA. He is phenomenally successful at what he does. And so I think it really does kind of depend on the role. The ability to connect with people and juries is important for what he does. If he does what I do, if you were to try to apply that skill set to what I do, which is review contracts and talk to bankers about debt deals may not be as translatable. So I think it's finding out what your skills are and finding the right way to apply them. And that is also a good measure of success.
Yeah, you know, I definitely agree with that. I do believe that it would be somewhat, you know, looking at the particular role, but in general, as I mean, for me, a rule of the qualifications and the things that are completely universally needed in good counsel to be successful would be just understanding the entire person, because we are so capable. All people generally are capable, and that is something that I believe we need to begin to truly consider when we are looking for qualifications. And that goes both ways, on both sides of the fence. And if we do that, we recognize that the pool is so full of potential candidates. When you move beyond the measure of, you know, what's needed for a particular role or particular company, it's really digging deep into what the company is about, what the firm is about, and understanding the people, because it's really about the people that show up every day to the practice of law. And I've seen some amazing lawyers who are able to think outside of the box. They are removed from any of the boundaries and the things that society, the structures that we, you know, are confined to every day. So when I look at, you know, what makes a good attorney, it's someone who's able to, like Sunita said, connect, someone who has a sense of self, pride, strong ethics. I mean, these are the true underpinnings, because you can go to the best schools with the best grades and just not be the best lawyer. So I'm very passionate about just stripping away all of that stuff and getting to the heart of who the person is, and making sure that they're really here to protect the client, to protect and to be true members of the fraternity that would want to impart the best advice, the best guidance in everything that they do and in every situation that they meet.
Stacy, thank you so much for your insight there. Let's go ahead and move on to our next question. Our next question is, what are some underlying biases that show up when law firms are hiring attorneys? Melody, would you take the lead on this, please?
Sure. Thank you. And thank all the panelists for being here as well. I think when firms hire, racial and gender bias are probably the most common to show up, starting sort of in the resume screening process. If recruiters have never seen a person, they look at a resume and to determine race, ethnicity, or gender. You know, they can look at a candidate's name. If the candidate's name is Sarah, obviously they know it's a woman, or might be a woman. If a person went to an HBCU, that might be an indicator of race. And, you know, they may choose candidates accordingly. And then in the interview process, when it comes to diversity, I think we're dealing with a lot of first generation law students who may not get into those elite schools. And if recruiters are targeting, you know, those number of schools, there may not be a lot of diverse candidates available to interview in the pool. Also at play, I think, is unconscious bias. And that is where, you know, interviewers may unconsciously be inclined to favor or advance white males, for example, over women or people of color, because they may not fit the image that's common within that particular firm, right? And so we all know that historically the practice of law has been very white and very male and not largely diverse. But the good news is this is slowly changing. And that's because the client base that these law firms serve is diverse. And I think clients are requiring their firms to be trained on things like explicit and unconscious bias and to meet real diversity objectives. So the business is driving that change. And I think that's a good thing.
Thank you, Melody. Would any of the panelists like to contribute to that question or have any thoughts in there?
Yes, Melody did hit the points pretty accurately. One thing I would interject though is, like any business, the founders, the owners, the leaders, those in the position, they usually reflect themselves. It's just human nature. I don't want to say it's a racial thing. It's just the way it tends to be. And that goes to other things besides just race. It goes to ranking of law schools, regional interests. Sometimes, people tend to, I see it many times in my career where some people call it nepotism, but some people call it employment, which the son of the partner, the founder of the firm is working as a partner, and other things of that nature. So it's a very, one of the things I like to leave here is there are a lot of factors that goes to what Melody said, and which is there's this notion of implicit bias, which goes to the heart of the owners, the leaders, that reflect themselves upon who they hire and who they take in. Now, it's human nature. It's not direct. There is no specific group that does it better than the other. But what is going on today is through the demographics of our nation, it's not very wise to run a business that only reflects the people the majority of the times are in the leadership position, because it'll reflect poorly on themselves. And that's one of the reasons why this caused a lot of discussion regarding diversity as of late, because our country demographically is changing. And that means the client base is changing. That also means the people that you're going to be serving is going to change. And if you're serving a certain type of clientele, then you're also limiting your opportunities for growth as well in your business. So that's why I think I wanted to interject that point today.
No, I think that's well said, Peter. I actually agree that is the case. But definitely, I think I see things changing. Historically, what was historically can be no more if you want to do business and do business successfully in this climate.
Yeah, I think Peter hit the nail on the head. I think it really goes down to companies when you get to the top of it, they're really hiring a reflection of themselves. The thing is that if we strip away some of those biases that Melody stated, like race, and you really go into the heart of who the person is, we recognize that you would truly be hiring a diverse pool. Because the thing is that while you may identify yourself, I hope that someone the first thing that they were identified with is their race, right? It should be the other key things that underpin who you are, underpin the values of your company, the mission, the vision, all of these things. And when we strip away like race and gender, and you go to the heart of the whole person, we begin to truly shift how we hire, who we allow to enter into some of the tiniest rooms, right? You see this playing out so often today that I do think it's a blend. It's exactly what Peter said and the issues that Melody has pointed out. And hopefully we get to a place where folks are truly just hiring the best person all around, like who they are and what they stand for.
Yeah, if I could add one thing on there, I think it's been interesting while we recruit for different law firms too. Sometimes we receive these job descriptions that come in and they're saying, we only want that top 25. And, maybe their owners did, maybe they went to a top 25 school, but that really does, it really just limits the amount of knowledge, I believe, in the office. I think that there's just so many different perspectives that are really just, not able to like have a seat at the table when we're limiting. But it's like, how do we get around that? What can we do differently? As we are searching for individuals, or just in terms of law firms, what can law firms do differently to understand that there is, other talent that is great and that needs to be heard and needs a voice at the table? Kind of as a follow-up, I'd like to toss that out there, and for anybody to comment on that.
Well, I'm sorry if I interrupted anyone in the process here, but one thing I will say is I think everyone here kind of articulated it, and this is why we're here, is to make the point, to be spoken, to speak it out. In the past, this was never really spoken about. And I think the only way this kind of resonate is the continuous reaching out about that. Now, one thing about all this is simple: human nature. People, it's very difficult sometimes to break that notion, because people have, they don't even know sometimes they have it, but it's so ingrained in their thinking that, you know, how do you step away from what you know? You know, like the top 25 law schools. It happens, right? Most likely there's someone in the leadership that has gone there, if not many members of the leadership, since they're hiring people like themselves, that have this cultural bias that then becomes the culture. And so how do you break that? Now, it takes, money breaks it, because if money doesn't come in and clients say, we don't want this, they'll change. But that's usually the crash course effect, right? So the real way to get across that change is to reflect on, hey, there are different qualities of what you need in the business. And it takes a continuous speaking out, because people don't listen after, you know, people have very short attention span, but if it's continuously bombarding them, and then it's going to affect their bottom line, it most likely will cause more of a change. And that's one of the ways I would say that it can be done. But for purposes for what you're asking, continuous illustration of what they see and what they think they see. What I mean is, if I have a skill set that can provide a benefit to a firm, emphasize that more. Because I promise you, you will find something in everybody that is quite different than what's not already there. And that's the continuous emphasis that you should reflect. Think about these new candidates. Think about this other opportunity. Because the more they get reinforced with that, they may not react to it the first 5 times. I promise you, after the 50th time, they will. And it's painful, but it's the reality of how human nature works. People built these things inside themselves, and they built it to the point that they think they're right. And how do you change that? It's not yelling at them. It's not, you know, it's a constructive reinforcement of that idea until it registers. And the only way it registers, they get a working example that challenges their notion that they're actually wrong. And that's one of the ways to do it.
You know, one of the things that I think would be good is that when these firms come to you, Diverse Talent, and say, we're looking for candidates who are in the top 25, I would ask them, like, can you list out, like, what exactly are you looking for? When you say top 25, what skills are you looking for? What person are you looking for? And let them answer this question. I mean, because honestly, to top 25 doesn't say anything to me. It says absolutely nothing. It's vague. It's unclear, right? It should be automatically dismissed. You should really ask them, like, what are you, like, define the candidate, define the person, because that would get you closer to the people that will make up your firm, and inherently will be crucial in the clients that you are actually able to attract. So, you know, it really starts with you guys, right? Like, really asking them to dig in and dig deep, right? And say, okay, can we, instead of saying top 25, right? Can you speak to what top 25 means to you? Because it may mean different things to different firms, right? Me, frankly, if I were to see a firm advertising like, oh, you know, we're looking for a candidate in the top 25, and I was, you know, where I am now in my career, I would not apply, because that's not the place that I'm looking for to you know, to start my career, because I would have questions like, what does that mean? And how would I be valued
Exactly.
as someone who did not go to a top 25? And I think myself to be a good lawyer. You know, so what does that mean? And I think it's really digging in and asking them to explain that, and to explain what makes up the person who goes to a top 25 school. And if they can't say that and explain that, then, you know, you guys have a tough decision to make, right?
Absolutely.
All money isn't good money. So, you
Absolutely.
know, can you truly give them what they're looking for beyond the top 25, you know, requirement?
No, I think that's great. And, you know, that's the biggest thing that we do. We say, okay, well, top 25, well, that's already limiting to so much demographic. So you're looking for something so specific, but really, what is it that you are looking for? Are you really looking to diversify your team, or, are you, trying to use somebody in that way? But that's the biggest thing we want to make sure is that, all firms that we're working with is, okay, top 25, that doesn't matter to us. We want to represent everybody that's in the industry of law. And that's the biggest thing that I'd like to show at this webinar too, is that, we want to represent everybody, and everybody is, can be a good attorney. And, limiting it because of education, it's already a hard thing for individuals. School costs money, law school costs money, top 25 school, maybe it's more expensive, but really getting away from that is really what we want to do. So thanks for letting me take that question. John, I'll turn it back to you for the next question.
Absolutely. Thank you, Austin. And I love everything that's being brought up, which kind of brings us to question number 3, which will be an interesting kind of segue. So it's, how does educational background add to the success of a good attorney? And as we think about the question, I'm thinking, if it is top 25, if it's not top 25, what do you get from all those levels of education? So I'll read it one more time. How does educational background add to the success of a good attorney? Peter, would you take the lead on this, please?
Thank you, Jonathan. First, I can speak a little bit about myself. I am a patent attorney by trade, and so I would be honest, I didn't go to a top 25 law school. I didn't go to a top 50 law school. Matter of fact, I didn't even go to a top 100 law school. I went to a law school that's even lower than that. But I went to a law school that actually is the highest producers of patent attorneys in the New England area. And New England is one of the biggest patent markets in the nation. Now, I'll give you the law school I went to, Suffolk University. If you haven't heard it, if you saw Matt Damon in that movie, God darn it, the movie where how these mobsters in there killing each other. I remember before the same was out, but he went, the character went to that law school. It was like I attended a night law school. And why? Well, it's not ranked. It's a school that is not ranked in the top 25, but it produced the highest numbers of patent attorneys, partners, and some of the big law firm, not any little thing in town here, big law firms, big law. That's what people term, whatever that means, but that's what they term it as. Why? Well, first, again, education. Let's be honest. Everybody is going to learn, depending on the jurisdiction you live in, you're going to learn the same thing. If you're ABA accredited, you're all learning really, technically, the same thing. Now, my case, I actually have an engineering background. I have a master's degree and a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. Now, in my profession, in my aspect of the law, you need at least a bachelor's to even do the work. And so, what happens? Why is that the criteria? Well, because with what I do, I can speak definitely that when I left law, when I went to work, I could never go back to being a full-time student. So the Harvards, the BU, the BCs of the world, it's not practical. And that happens to a lot of everybody else. I imagine in some of those here today, that the practicalities of being in the top 25 most likely means they're gonna have to go to full-time. Some do offer evenings, but it depends on what region you live in. And I wasn't, in many of the schools in the Boston area, many of those schools in the top 25 weren't offering evening programs. So basically, I was left. But here's the caveat that out of all that stuff that I just said there, I didn't pay a dime for law school. The time I went, law firms were paying for people like me to go to school to do the work. It was a different time now. The caveat here I'm trying to lead here is, while people worried about top 25, there are benefits in not even doing none of that. It's up to the individual to go out of their way to make that assessment for themselves. If I was going to worry about top 25, I probably would have had over $150,000 in loans. I probably would have had to have no work experience because I would have never worked I worked as a patent agent at the time. I would have no work experience in my field of relevant interest. So I would start at zero when I left. Don't want to be harsh. I don't want to put anybody down who went the other path. That's okay too, but everybody's different. And so what I want to leave out there is judging whether you went to top 25 law school, and by the way, top 25 today, if you're number 23, 24, maybe next year you'll be number 50, who knows? The thing changes like a wind. So who cares what it is? But what I'm trying to articulate is to those who are concerned about that, look, I have worked at small law, I've worked at big law, I've worked at some of the biggest law firms in the world. It doesn't matter. At some point or another, actually, maybe in your second year, it means something for some people, but after some point, it actually has no value. Because trust me, at this 20 years of practicing, if someone employer is going to ask me about if I went to a top 25 law school, I'm going to say, did you read my resume, actually? Because that's not going to matter. Matter of fact, it really doesn't in reality. It really doesn't. But what I want to leave here is my educational background. Because of what I did, because of my background in engineering, I was able to actually maximize what I did in law. And it's all really based on that. In my case, I have a lot of other degrees beside those things. But what I wanted people to understand is top 25 is great. And I'm not, it's in a comp, it's not easy. So those who find that opportunity for themselves there, that's good. A lot of us will not, but that doesn't also mean we're not able to provide and become good lawyers. And if your aspiration is to be a good lawyer, that shouldn't be your criteria to not be it. So in that sense, it's education does. But before I know here, another thing about law, and I can speak about tax, I know many tax attorneys. If your background is in accounting, you can go to any rinky-dink law school, but you know what? There's a demand for those guys. A lot more demand than even other areas of the law. And guess what? None of them I know didn't go to those types of schools either because they have to work. And so it's a practicality. It's a practicality that I feel I think some companies may be ignoring because, again, there's an implicit bias to being reflective. But in reality is the whole, that's why you have so many law schools. You have so many law schools, then you've got so many different individuals that, sometimes the best person may not be in what those categorized schools are. But at the same time, there's nothing wrong about being there either. So I don't want to leave a saying that it's bad about being top 25. It's also okay to be in the top 300, whatever that is, right? At the end of the day, it's up to the individual to believe in themselves and believe what they want to offer. So background is important, but also truly believe that if you have something to offer in this profession, don't let that be the criteria that you can't make it. Because some of us may not be able to get the SAT score, LSAT scores to get into those schools. And sometimes, even if you did, doesn't mean you're going to be a good lawyer. What matters at the end of the day is what you have within yourself and what you build around that, because the law is very diverse. So if you're just coming in as a lawyer, it'd be nice also to add some other things beside that to complement your background. So hopefully that I left a good, hopefully I answered your question in that regards, but that's what I wanted to leave as my position on that issue.
Jonathan, can I maybe just add just a couple of points on educational background. I definitely agree with what Peter said. And I think what people have to understand, regardless of what law school you went to, law school teaches you to think like a lawyer, doesn't teach you to be a lawyer. A lot of that is learned on the job, right? And I think that, with this educational background, we're getting a foundation for the practice. A lot of writing, a lot of reading, a lot of analytical work. And it really is sort of just practicing and honing that craft. And it's a training ground for what is to come, but it is not necessarily the job. And so no matter what law school you go to, there's a law review, there's a moot court. There are the things that you can participate in across the board to become a better attorney. To be trained to, it's a training ground again, for what is to come. And so I just kind of wanted to add that, we're all learning the same thing in law school, like Peter said, which is to think like a lawyer.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with the sentiments with respect to top 25. I went to what I consider to be the top law school in the nation, which is Howard University School of Law, matriculating some of the best and brightest ever to join firms, public interest groups, teams. I mean, when you really think of the, beyond this notion of top 25, you recognize that there are excellent lawyers out there. One of the things that trouble me when we, I guess, define the candidate by the law school is that that person was actually matriculating and being educated well before law school, right? And have had successes. And how did they start off? When you really dig into the educational period that the person has applied themselves, you learn so much more about them than if you just focus on like, oh, we're looking for top 25. What if you went to top 25, let's say undergrad, and then you didn't go to a top 25 law school? What does that mean? What if you went to private school? I mean, if we really begin to hone in only on top 25 candidates, then you lose so much, because the richness of education just isn't in instruction, right? It's in, like what Melody said, the experience. What experiences have you had? What opportunities were you exposed to? Did you travel? Did you go to, some sort of international program? These are all things I think that really comes together in identifying like solid candidates. So if we can X out the top 25 thing, I think that, maybe, going back to Peter's earlier point, right? Human nature. Maybe they're believing that if I put a top 25, attorney, top 25 law, someone who has graduated from the top 25 in front of my potential clients, that I am more likely to get more business, right? If they may believe that, they may believe that they're able to have some sort of the ability to easily communicate with others who may have gone to top 25 and whatnot. So it's really asking the question, like, what does that mean for your business? And if they believe that having top 25 means a 20% increase in revenue, that's for them, that's important. What does it mean? And that does not, and if that's the measure of the reason for wanting top 25, which it could very well be, right, then they're not really looking for diverse candidates. It comes down to that. They're just not looking for it. And they're not looking for the whole person. They're not looking for the best candidate. They're looking for the ability to say, we have, this lawyer associate who graduated from, Harvard Law School, and ching, now you're like, 20% increase in revenue. And if that's the test for them, then they're not really looking for diverse candidates in that instance, right? And then if it is that is what they stand behind, the ability to be able to have that deep bench of top 25 lawyers, then it would say to me that that firm is not going to truly put behind diverse candidates the resources, the opportunities, the work that they would need to succeed at the firm. So you're going to have high turnover. So it's really digging in and letting them answer the question, what does top 25 mean? Because if they're not going to put in the resources and the opportunities, and if it is that you're going to hire candidates who are not in the top 25, and then they get there and they're getting, doc review, right, for the first 2 years of their career without any meaningful opportunities, then leave us alone. We're not interested in your firm, right? We're not. Because the thing is, when I decided to go to law school to get instruction as to how to be a lawyer, right, to understand what it takes, the analytical, the ability to actually understand how to, and I hate saying to think like a lawyer, but how to really understand the law, the policy behind the law, these things. When I came out, my expectation is that I am equipped, I am ready to join this fraternity and to serve the masses, the people, the companies. So if it is that top 25 is what you're looking for, don't hire me if you're not going to give me the same opportunities, because really it's just a sinking ship at that point. And we find so much turnover, and you have a lack of, people of color, minorities in partnership positions at these firms. And it begs the question, why? And I think that is the question. I would love to have a firm that said, hey, we're looking for top 25 to be here today to answer that question. Because I do think that would be very, interesting to see how they explain that. and what does that actually mean to them when they ask that question, when they make that the requirement or the qualification for the candidate.
Absolutely. And I just want to say I'm really enjoying the discussion. I'm learning a lot over here, by the way. So this kind of segues us over to question number 4. So what challenges have you seen individuals face that graduated from a law school that is not considered a top 25 university? Melody, would you take the lead on this, please?
Sure, absolutely. I'm loving this conversation as well. And I can tell you, like some of the folks on here, I did not attend a top 25 university, not even close. A few things. First, if you didn't go to one of those top 25 universities, there are prestigious firms, I think, like we were saying, that won't even look at your resume. Did you go to Harvard, Yale, Stanford, NYU? If not, you might not even get past that first screening with some of those elite firms, right? Schools that are not considered part of that elite 25, the legal industry, a lot of times, if you're talking about recruiting at the law school level, they recruit regionally for those schools. And so I graduated from an evening program at University of Detroit Mercy School of Law, small Catholic school. I wanted to be an entertainment lawyer. I worked through law school. I did an evening program just like Peter. And I worked my way through law school. I worked in tech and in a legal department. But this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an entertainment lawyer. So I applied to firms in at New York, LA, and Atlanta. And I received a lot of rejections, mostly rejections. But here's the deal. I think that students at these schools are going to be some of the most resilient people. They are going to be some of the most resilient lawyers, because even though these firms are not checking for us, we are doing the things to ensure that when we do show up, right, we have the qualities that folks are looking for, right? We have the business qualities, we have charisma, we have hustle, we are willing to work those long hours. I think we have more interesting backgrounds and stories, and though we are not maybe what the traditional big law firms are looking for, many of us end up being very successful owning our own firms. Just might take a little bit longer for them to get there. I can now say, and my path was derailed from entertainment, but I'm a 15-year veteran in the tech industry. I've worked for some of the biggest technology companies out there, and there are also quite a few attorneys that went to Harvard, that went to Stanford there, and I'm alongside them holding my own. And so I think, we really have to, like Stacey said, consider, how people show up, the person, the entire person, right? What do you bring of value, right, to the legal profession? And I think even though you don't go to a top 25, doesn't mean that you don't have, a million different things to offer that someone who went to that school didn't. And so that makes you a unique candidate, and diversity is a good thing. So, but yeah, I think the resiliency certainly, it trumps everything else to me. So I'll let someone else comment on that.
Yeah, Melody is right. I mean, to limit or to create this air that top 25 somehow means that you are better, or the candidate is better than someone who did not go to top 25, is devaluing of the entire person. Not even, beyond the person who may not have gone to the top 25, it's also devaluing of the person who actually went to the top 25 schools, right? We are so much more. And firms should really, and I urge them to ask themselves, what does a top 25 candidate mean to you? And to find other ways to have that in your list of qualifications. That's it. Let's strike certain words out of what is it you're looking for, right? And to Melody's point, I didn't go to a top 25 law school. And quite frankly, I have worked with people who have gone to top 25 law schools and people who have not gone to top 25 law schools. And quite frankly, some of the best and brightest, when you find out where they went to school, it wasn't a top 25 law school, because they have worked so hard to really hone in on their skill set, right? You are devoted to your practice. You are devoted to understanding. You're reading the cases that's in the news. You are reading, the agreements that ended up in the biggest litigation to know like what you will absolutely not do, right? In other agreements that you may be drafting, right? You follow cases. You are speaking. You are actually sharing. You are going to conferences. You are networking. All of those things, I think, goes to the heart of what it is. So if you have, and I'm saying this to anyone who is contemplating going to law school and has not been accepted to a top 25 law school, anyone who is currently in law school who is not at a top 25 law school, anyone who has graduated from a non-top 25 law school, you mean the world to the profession. Because we need you, right? You are more than the school that you're going to. And you are, in many instances, the exception, because you may be the first person in your whole family to even get to that point. You are valued. Like, understand, you are valued. And any firm that's not willing to hire you, they're lost, right? So the next message would be to the law firms who are requiring top 25 students as a measure of the qualifications. I implore you to stop. Everyone matters, we all matter, and there is much more value beyond the top 25 banner. And you would recognize that you would get so much more out of it. So as someone who did not graduate from a top 25 law school, I matter, and I know that my contributions to the legal industry will continue to carry on, and my expectation that those that come after me would also have the opportunity for that. And for me, I am thankful that I did get an opportunity to go to big law. Some of my biggest supporters have gone to top 25 law schools. So this is not a dig against people who have gone to top 25 law schools. I have had great support from, big law firms that have, poured into me, right? Companies that have poured into me where I've learned a lot, but the measure of it is absolutely not necessarily the banner of top 25. We are way more than that. And we go to these institutions, top 25 or not, to really come out and to be the best lawyers that we can be. So Melody is exactly correct. That really should not be the underpinning of the actual candidate and where they actually matriculated.
Can I add one more point just before we move on? Number one thing, one of the things I do want to articulate is this top 25 thing could be today. Again, it changes, right? 10 years from now, who knows what the top 25 is going to be? Some schools go up, some schools go down. Matter of fact, it goes up and down like a yo-yo every year. So I don't, if you're going to measure something up like that, right? I understand you're going to always have the Harvards of the world or whatever, but think about it. If you're going to measure yourself based on a yo-yo, then where are you really going with that, right? I mean, you can't. I mean, if you're going to measure something let's look. I'll give you an example. If you're hiring applicants from the top 25 law school today, 10 years from now, I promise it's going to be a whole different list, at least in the top 20, the 25. So the question is, what is the value of something that's variable like that? And where are you really going with that? Think about it. Would you want to buy a car that costs $1 today, but $15? I'm giving you an example. I mean, what do? Do you just wait? I mean, it's unpredictable. These rankings that these law schools and these folks are relying on, they're not really fact-based. They're statistical analysis that measures variabilities on an annual basis because they change a parameter. So what is the top 25 means almost a statistical insignificance at some point to measuring value. Another thing too, there was a study, and I know this was done a couple years ago, that correlated success with education. Do you know the correlation? Zip. there is no, if you go to a top school doesn't mean you're going to be the most successful person. That's been proven mathematically, actually. And another thing I want to leave behind here is look at the president of the United States. Did he go to a top 25 law school? Leave it at that.
You know, I'm loving this part. It kind of, I guess my question, this is not on our list of questions, but it sounds like one of the most important things is grit. I'm kind of hearing this theme, right? Is that someone can, they demonstrate that willingness to grind, right? So I'm hearing like night school to get the law degree. How does a law firm, you know, if I own a law firm, like how do you coach me to adjust that perspective and open myself up to really like accounting for someone who didn't go to the top 25 and they had to grind? Like how do I include that into my process when I'm bringing on a lawyer?
I think you have to go back to the client base that you're serving. Let's think about this, right? If your clients or if your firm is serving criminal clients, right? Criminal defense. What are you looking for, you know, in your lawyers? Do you want your lawyers to be able to have empathy? Do you want your lawyer to be able to understand or you know, understand certain socioeconomic backgrounds? There are different things that I think you can bring to the table. Like Peter was saying, he's a patent attorney. Bringing that background that he had, that engineering background to the table, is important. I think a lot of people of color choose law as a second profession. This is my second profession. My background was in sales, and I mostly supported sales organizations in tech companies. And that background, I think a lot of times, you know, you can bring something to the table depending on your industry, but at the end of the day, the clients, whatever the client's needs are, that is how you recruit. Because whatever the client needs for that lawyer to bring to the table, that's what you need to recruit for. Those are the things that I think are going to be important.
And I'll just add something there too. Being in the top 25, I think all of us will agree, opens doors to getting interviews at law firms or companies. No doubt about it. But to your original question there, Jonathan, about grit, sometimes those folks that were in the top 25, they don't make it at the big law firms or the companies, but the ones that are willing to put in the hard work, and that will show on a resume, those are the ones that tend to make it, in my opinion. So part of that, and I think a necessary part of it, is networking. You've got to network. You've got to meet people, because those doors are not open for you because you didn't graduate from the top 25. But if you meet people and you have the opportunity to explain what your skills are, what your background is, what you're capable of, and how hard you're willing to work, to me, that goes a whole lot further than just saying, you know, I graduated middle of my class at Harvard.
Absolutely, Sunil. I appreciate hearing that. You know, that's one of the things that we've been talking a lot about at Diverse Talent is network and is your net worth, you know? And so I love that you brought that up. This kind of segues us to our last question for this webinar. Share an experience you've had with a colleague that has been very successful in their professional legal career that did not graduate from a top 25 university. And I'd love to hear from everybody, but Sunil, if you take the lead on this, please.
Yeah. So one of the first jobs I had out of law school at a big law firm was a partner who went to a sub 100, we'll call it, law school. But he had this is my understanding, I knew him as a more senior lawyer, but when he was a junior lawyer, he had that hustle, he had that drive, that desire to serve his client well. And the legal industry is a service industry. You've got to serve your client. He proved his worth, served his clients well, and you know, he never had an ad or put up a billboard or anything like that. Word just spread. And if you needed his type of legal services in the state of Georgia, he was the guy. And I was lucky enough to work for him for 3 years. And got to see that, you know, this guy at the top of a big law firm with the biggest book of business, one of the biggest books of business of anyone at that law firm, succeeded just by pure hard work. And on his desk, he had a little paperweight kind of thing that said, "I'm sure hard work has killed somebody before," kind of as a joke, because the only way he got to where he was not because he went to a top 25 law school, just because he was a good lawyer. You know, he just worked hard, and the word spread.
Yeah, I agree with Sunil that, you know, in my experience, you know, I know a number of lawyers who did not go to top 25 law schools that are insanely successful in their careers. And it's truly a measure of their hard work and dedication to the practice. So, you know, the proof is in the pudding is that, you know, that's not necessarily a direct measure. Being a top 25 is not directly a measure of success. It is the hard work and the effort and the things that you put in day to day to hone your craft and to just excel. So I've had a number of excellent experiences with lawyers who did not graduate from the top 25. And honestly, I didn't even think I even looked for it, you know, like where you went to school. I mean, that's like such a weird thing for me to even think about, like, oh, where did you go to school? You know, you're so brilliant. You know, it's typically just, you know, working with bright, excellent people who think outside of the box to find solutions to the problems that we face in the business.
Well, I will say this, the industry I'm in, the side of the law that I've made my career in, I would be honest, not many, I never met a top 25 big shot. Everybody from the big law world that I've worked in into the small law world that I started in. Many of those guys were just guys who were engineers who went to work, and either they started as engineers and then went into law, or they are so a similar path I did. We went into the business, you know, through being a patent agent, working in law firms, and then went into law school. And so what happens is you don't really have that need. These guys most likely are not going to go to full-fledged, you know, full-time law studies at some of these top schools. And so what happens is I really haven't really honestly met any. It's just the truth of that reality. It's the nature of what my side of the law. Of course, there are some exceptions, but I haven't come across that even now. You know, I could speak to many of the folks that I weren't actually some of the top guys at the firm I'm at right now all went to Suffolk. So, and it's a big law firm. It's just the nature of the profession I'm in. And so it's not a killer. And I've met other folks who've gone the other side of laws, people who practice in other areas. And I've met all types of people who have gone to those top 25 and those who didn't. It's a matter of, like Sunil said, it's a matter of your motivation. What I want to tell folks who are in this situation or thinking about this, have a plan. What do you want out of this profession? If you are looking to be rich, then you better have a plan to know what that means for you. We all can get out of it different things. Me, I went into it because I actually genuinely had an interest in IP law when I was in college. And so my path led me to the patent office before I actually entered this profession. Everyone else maybe have a different path. And what, you know, those, instead of worrying about top 25, and this is for the recruiter, and I'll address that later, but those who are considering law school, what do you want from this? If you want something out of it, you need a plan. And the plan can't be just certain gravitas. You need to have a genuine assessment of yourself, because this profession, you're going to have some ups and you're going to have some downs. So you're going to have to determine whether you can deal with that and how far and how strong and how determined are you to go forward with whatever you want to do. Now, going back to the companies, the firms that are doing this, you know, I only have one. It comes to quality, right? What are the qualities are you looking for in individuals? And if their only top 25 is their only quality, then that's okay. That's good for them. But if you're looking for a long-term growth prospect for your incoming class of attorneys to become prospective partners in the future, that can't be it. So what other qualities are you looking for? I think everyone kind of mentioned it. If these firms can't give you a quality list, a list of qualities they're looking for in people, then they're not really serious about anything. Let's not talk about diversity. They're not serious about anything, really. If they're going to worry about a numerical value that changes like a yo-yo every other year or every 5 years to every 2 years, then that's fine. But you're not really looking for a growth plan, because if you're looking to grow a firm or have great applicants come in, you have to have a list of quality. You have to have a list of each practice group in the firm probably will have different lists of qualities. And if you're not going to identify what that is to a recruiter, then they're not really serious about what they want to do. So I want to leave it at that.
Yeah, I agree, Peter. If that's not the homework for firms and even companies who are looking to hire anyone, then they're just not seriously interested in getting the best candidates, because if you can't articulate what the qualities are and the values of the business of your clients, then it doesn't even make sense going through the interview process. Like, I mean, why even have do that? It just doesn't make sense. Because you're just truly not going to end up with the best bench of candidates, number one. And you are then now ruling out probably, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how many law schools do we have in the US? I mean,
200.
anyone knows? 200. So
Hundreds, yeah.
Hundreds, right? So you are ruling out probably 90%, right, of the attorneys. I mean, that's insane to me. And then often we hear the bench is limited, the pool is limited, the pool is limitless, right? We are out here, and it's truly defining for each practice group. It's going to differ, obviously, with what you're looking for. You can actually have an opportunity to get the best lawyers by truly digging deep to understand the culture of your group, the culture of your team, the culture of the clients that you work for, and to make sure that you're meeting those measures beyond just the educational successes that a particular candidate may have at a particular law school.
Thank you so much. And in the interest of time, looks like we're down to 1 minute. Melody, do you have any final thoughts?
Sure. I want to speak to just candidates or anyone who's considering law school. I think passion takes you a long way. I remember my contracts professor telling me in her first year, he said, the law is a selfish mistress or mister, right? And that means that you're going to spend a lot of long hours in the office. Know that this is something that you want to do. And if it is, pursue your passion with vigor.
Thank you so much. Now I'd like to turn it on over to Austin for closing thoughts.
Yeah, well, I just want to say thank you very much to all the panelists for coming today. I think the conversation was amazing, and it was a conversation that really needs to be had. So thank you all again for taking the time. We also do webinars about every month, so please stay tuned for the next webinar. But thank you all again, and we will see you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.